for joining today's conversation. As you can see, we have the agenda for the call up here. We're going to start by talking about why a focus on equity. This is if you're familiar with the Skillman Foundation, this is kind of a new term as far as an impact or focus area for us. So we're going to start there, like why equity? Why is this so critical to the work that we see ahead for not only our organization, but this particular moment in time in Detroit and for Detroit youth. Then we're going to talk about some of the values that are underlaying our work and how they connect to how we identified and developed our strategy. We'll then get on to what is the strategy, an overview of what we're calling our opportunity agenda for Detroit children. After that high-level overview, we're going to take a deep dive on the economy, I fumbled up my own deck here, the equity strategy. And we'll be taking questions and answers live throughout in the question box. You'll see that on the right-hand side in a panel. Please type your questions in as you think of them. We'll try to type back during the webinar, but we'll also be having about 20 minutes at the end where we'll be discussing those questions live. Please continue to send them at that time, and we'll answer everything that we possibly can during the call. If we run out of time, we'll be responding to your questions individually after the call, so please keep those going. Today's presenters on equity are David McGee, our program director who oversees both the equity as well as the economy impact area, Robert Thornton, senior program officer, who has had a number of roles in the organization particularly lately with our Boys of Color work, our safety work, and is going to be covering the safety platform today. And Kumar Raj, program officer, who's worked deeply in our community leadership strategy as well as our Boys of Color work. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to David McGee.
Thank you so much, Natalie. As we think about equity, I wanted to just start with this quote. And this quote is important because it reminds us of the urgency of now. As the latter part speaks to, right now is the time his bones are being formed, his blood is being made, and his senses are being developed. To him we cannot answer tomorrow. His name is today. So when you hear the foundation dive into this equity strategy, we do it with a sense of urgency, not just to meet the needs of young people, but to also make sure that we lift up their voice and ensure that their voice is heard. So as Detroit recovers, young people participate in that recovery, and it's done in an equitable fashion. But the urgency of now is important simply because 1 in 3 Detroit youth between the ages of 16 and 24 are neither in school nor working. 1 in 3 young people, which equates to about 24,000 between ages of 16 and 24, are neither in school or working. And as astonishing as this is, the national statistics is 1 in 7. But here in Detroit, 1 in 3. This is something that continues to be top of mind as we continue to dive into our work. Another alarming statistic is when you think about across the U.S., 1 in 3 U.S. youth are arrested by the time they turn 23. So you'll hear Robert talk about the safety strategy and why this is so important and why we consider the urgency of now more important than ever. There are a few values that are actually underlying our work. The first is kids come first. The work that we will continue to do will focus on improving outcomes for youth while supporting equity across the community and within systems. Talent is well distributed, but opportunity is not. We recognize that Detroit youth have every capacity and desire to be successful, and they deserve every opportunity to be successful. Youth and community know what's best, and they know what's needed, and their voices need to be heard. So we will continue to do things with them, not to them or for them. And lastly, but definitely not least, no more workarounds. We understand that systems have to change, and system change is necessary. Sustainable change requires it, even if it's hard, and we cannot lean on the workarounds, and it requires all of us, the corporate community, the public sector, the philanthropic sector. We all have to work together to move outcomes on behalf of kids. And that's why we focus on an opportunity agenda for children, because we believe this is important. The result that we will focus on as a foundation is making sure that Detroit children are prepared for and connected to opportunities in an ever-evolving economy and are making significant contributions to our city's recovery. This leads us to our opportunity agenda framework, which is driven by 3 pillars: education, equity, and economy. For this particular webinar, we will focus on the equity aspect of our work, and these are efforts in which we will measure our success. 3rd grade reading proficiency, high school graduation, the number of 18 to 24-year-olds who are in school or working, 24-month post-secondary persistence, as well as youth perception of opportunity and hope. So why equity? The vitality of Detroit is tied to youth having equitable access to resources and opportunities that assist and support them as they matriculate into adulthood. Far too many youth in Detroit are at risk of becoming educationally, socially, and economically marginalized. Within the equity impact area, the foundation will leverage our opportunity to change conditions for Detroit youth by building leadership and influencing system-level change. The goal is to reduce and help young people overcome barriers, increase opportunities to access, and ensure that young people have a strong voice in the city's recovery. We will do this through 3 strategic approaches: safety, youth development, and community leadership. As a foundation, we're paying increased attention to the vulnerable youth who are at risk of being disconnected. And while the achievement gap continues to be a priority of ours, this reality does not reveal itself in isolation. It is coupled, unfortunately, with a growing opportunity gap. The success that comes with the sequence of graduating from high school, gaining post-secondary education, and securing employment isn't the experience of many youth in Detroit. We recognize that additional supports are needed and must be coupled with improvements of systems and policies to positively impact youth. Youth in Detroit deserve access to an array of growth opportunities that allow them to build relationships and networks that make possible a variety of pathways for lifetime success. Our grant-making and change-making strategies within the equity impact area will focus on a few things: prevention efforts, systems change, and also leadership development, resulting in stronger pipelines and better supports for youth transition into adulthood. This strategy will be delivered through these strategic approaches to reduce the number of young Detroiters whose prospects are limited from exclusionary discipline practices within school settings and interactions with the criminal courts and law enforcement. We will implement a safety strategy to increase access to high-quality out-of-school time opportunities for youth in Detroit, advancing a common agenda for outcomes at the system, program, and youth levels. We will implement a youth development strategy. And to prepare youth for productive adult life and civic leadership roles by creating opportunities for them to explore, practice, and develop their own leadership capacities, supported by a network of caring adults working to improve youth outcomes, we will implement a community leadership strategy. To talk deeply about our safety strategy, I would like to turn it over to Robert Thornton, Senior Program Officer here at the Skillman Foundation.
Thank you, David, and good evening, everyone, and good afternoon. So just as a matter of context, I'd just like to share the fact that for the past 4 years, we've been working very deeply with a number of community partners around this issue of safety, with our primary focus being to increase children's real and perceived safety, and particularly in areas around schools and youth development hubs. As a result of those efforts, we've been able to create safe pathways for students who are traveling to and from school and youth development hubs. We've made a significant advancements in community embedded policing, helping to ensure that police are equipped so that they can carry out the work necessary in the neighborhoods, and we have utilized CompStat data to help fight fight crime in real time. A lot of effort has gone into transforming community culture through restorative practices training and other neighborhood heart efforts. And then finally, we've been able to curb youth violence through working with partners like the Youth Violence Prevention Program and the Ceasefire Program to reduce anti-gang activities and changing culture around school discipline and policy reform. So as a result of those efforts, we've had a 40% decrease in crime in targeted neighborhoods and a 48% decrease in youth victimization rates. Because not only do we want to reduce youth victimization rates, but we also want to reduce the number of young youth who are helping to perpetuate this violence. But over the last 4 years, working together, we've learned that these various investments have not only contributed to well-documented levels of crime reduction throughout certain segments of the city, but have also increased perceptions of safety for children traveling to and from schools and other youth development sites in their neighborhoods. Another significant yield has been the increase in positive police-community relations, creating a cultural change in community-police interactions and building trust where little existed before. Law enforcement and communities are working together now as one community where very little trust existed in some of those neighborhoods. So why is this important? I think it's important for a variety of different reasons. But first of all, it's important because we've learned that this is the result of a comprehensive network of collaborative partners focused on a common agenda and willing to go deep and remain tenacious in order to sustain the success in the work. We understand that if this work is going to happen, that we need to be aligned with partners in the community, and we need to be arming one another and working in a collective manner, bringing our full capacities and knowledge together to create safe opportunities for young people. The other thing that we found out is that despite all these important advancements, our youth still suffer from disproportionate arrests and prosecutions. And so if nothing is done to reverse this trend, the future prospects of young diminish on a daily basis. When youth are arrested, there are many potential consequences, including youth may be required to pay fines and court fees and restitution, of which many of them cannot afford to pay. Juvenile arrest may impact a young person's ability to enlist in the military. We know that immigration is a major issue in our communities right now, and a juvenile arrest may impact a young person's immigration status. Although we know that you can have records expunged for young people and for juveniles, some juvenile records are open to the public. And there are a number of youth being expelled for school for very petty incidents. And so we need to make sure that while we are working in these communities, that we're working aligned and in a collective manner, because this is a complex problem that requires a significant shift in the enforcement of policies and practices that will help to improve police-community relations and enhance law enforcement accountability while we're investing in community-based supports. We do believe that by focusing on this present opportunity to influence change on a systemic level, we have the opportunity to impact how local law enforcement systems, school systems, all the big systems working together can help to change opportunities for young people. So we plan to do that in 3 different platforms. Through a youth violence interventions platform, working with the courts and juvenile justice system around juvenile diversion programs, and then finally using restorative practices as a way of changing community culture and policies about how we relate to young people. So if we reduce the number of young Detroiters whose future prospects are limited as a result of school exclusionary discipline practices and interaction with law enforcement, we can expect that young people can begin to thrive like we would all want them to thrive. We have success from our strategic approaches in the past. We have numerous proof points about what worked, and now we need to work in a collective manner to make sure that we are bringing all of our full talents together to create maximum of collective impact. And we can do that by increasing the number of community partners who are engaged in the public safety ecosystem, also by improving police-community relations through increased information sharing. And finally, we want to make sure that we are working around reduction in youth-perpetrated crime, as well as reduction of youth engaged in gangs and gang violence. And we know that we are seeing significant improvement in each one of these areas. Our belief is focused on reducing exclusionary discipline practices within school settings and increases youth access to education, employment prospects, and future income. And we expect that we've been seeing great results with the restorative practices platforms that have been instituted in the schools. We are now working with a number of different broad systems partners to institute of these practices high level. So we're training a number of high-level law enforcement officers to begin to change the culture within the law enforcement community. We have been working very intensely with our public schools and charter schools to change the way teachers and administrators are administering discipline in the schools, making sure that young people stay in school and stay in schools much longer. At this time, I'm going to stop right there and allow time for you to just focus on this a little bit so you can ask the kinds of questions that you want to ask.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was very insightful and helpful, and hopefully you all found it the same way. As we talk about the youth development aspect of our work, the Good Neighborhoods Initiative yielded some positive results, and many of you all are aware that our desire there was to increase the scale and quality of youth programming across 6 neighborhoods to ensure that young people had access to the necessary supports to meaningfully graduate from high school and ready themselves for college, career, and life. Some of our principal investments in that work over the past 10 years included sustaining youth programming through a youth development fund, as many of you all recognize as an RFP. We'll talk about that a little later. We provided funding for some of youth employment efforts, supporting youth nonprofits to administer re-granting to neighborhood providers. We supported some infrastructure and coordination support for high-quality youth programs. Also established the Youth Development Resource Center to increase quality and provide proof points, standards, common metrics, and data capacity, as well as supporting neighborhood learning networks. Throughout that work, we achieved many things. An estimated 15,000 neighborhood youth were served annually through different foundation-funded programs. Program quality results and youth outcomes continue to generate positive feedback. Efforts were established to share youth development framework with strong neighborhood providers, so everybody was operating with common language, and lessons from the youth development system building work in the neighborhoods provided a springboard for a citywide system, which speaks to our next iteration of youth development work, because we've learned a couple of lessons in this space. So yes, we expanded youth development opportunities by 40% across neighborhoods from 2010 to 2014, but there remains an issue of sustainability without additional dedicated public funding. So our approach to youth development is really identifying 3 verticals, if you will: dedicated public funding, program quality improvement, and promising programs, which we will term as proof point. This continues to be of importance to the foundation for the simple fact that across Michigan, 1 in 4 children are alone or unsupervised after school. 1 in 4. And in Detroit, thousands of youth lack access to consistent, high-quality out-of-school programs, missing critical opportunities to build healthy relationships, learn beyond the classroom, and develop personally as well as professionally. Supporting and coordinating the individuals and institutions that interface with youth is essential, and it's where we want to place our focus moving forward. There are challenges in addressing the supply and demand of program quality, availability, and funding. For example, 21st Century funding offered through the U.S. Department of Education is the only federal funding source designed and dedicated specifically for after-school and summer programming. Dedicated public funding is essential for youth development in Detroit. Public funding mechanisms are widely employed for many purposes. For example, there are about 36,000 special taxing districts across the country that fund roads, airports, and other public services, as I'm sure you're aware, but not so much for children. Based on the Foundation's experience and research, we have found that high-quality youth development systems consist of 5 attributes. The first being scale. That's accessible, available, comprehensive ranges of high-quality programming that can reach a large population of children. The next piece is quality. Evidence-based principles that help youth programs set meaningful improvement goals on data, enact new practices, and create powerful development environments for youth. Another one is funding. Resources captured and allocated by a public governmental entity. Impact and shared data. The ability to benchmark results, as well as capture data to evaluate impact and ensure that financial investments are providing better outcomes for individual youth. And lastly, a coordinating entity, an entity that is designed to manage and direct funding and programming to ensure accountability for youth. Through this strategy, the foundation will use our civic leadership voice to convene and galvanize champions and stakeholders to establish a stable, local revenue stream that can only be spent on services for children allocated by a public governmental entity. This will in turn, we hope, revolutionize how our community engages with and supports youth, increase public investments, and maximize the use of existing resources to support a larger system where dollars can trickle down to many organizations such as yourself. So what does a strategy on dedicated public funding look like for the foundation? We have begun to explore solutions for dedicated funding. We're examining the local feasibility. We're also working on developing the case and aligning other funders to join Skillman in this effort, decide what measure to actually take, build momentum, and prepare to launch. So the goal is, in 2018, to have a clear pathway towards dedicated public funding for out-of-school time services for young people, like other cities have also begun to do. The next pillar in the youth development work is program quality improvement. Through this strategy, the foundation will strengthen program quality and continuous improvement efforts, resulting in safe, supportive, and productive environments for youth. This will, in turn, we believe, strengthen workforce capacity by training youth workers on promising and best practices, and increase the accountability of youth-serving organizations by encouraging them to use quality standards. So having a facility that's funded and programmed is one thing, but also supporting the adults that engage with those young people is something that we're paying increased attention to because of its importance. Lastly is what we're calling promising programs. In other words, proof point, grant making. This strategy is designed to strengthen the infrastructure of youth-serving organizations, supporting their ability to deliver promising programs that serve as proof points for scalable investments, or creating a body of evidence for moving a particular outcome forward, such as third grade reading. While the infrastructure and design of youth development systems is being built, there is also a need to target and strengthen programming that increases outcomes for youth. So from a programmatic standpoint, you'll see the foundation make investments in programs that serve as proof points to inform system change or connect to other focus areas that the foundation cares about: college and career pathways, financial empowerment, literacy and numeracy. We'll also make pivotal investments that support youth success in school, work, and civic life through creating new opportunities, expanding access, and enriching learning experiences. So direct programming support will exist in ways that increase access and availability and scalability for youth. I know that will likely be a question. Will Skillman roll out another request for proposals? Will Skillman still fund programming? This is why dedicated funding is so important, because though we wish we did, as a foundation, we don't have all of the resources needed to meet the large demand across the city that exists. So securing dedicated funding will create a pathway for tens of millions of dollars to actually float a program such as yourself on an annual basis to meet the needs of several organizations. So will the foundation roll out an RFP like we have in the past? The answer to that is no. Will the foundation launch a strategy in 2018 to fund out-of-school time activities that increase access, that help youth increase access, availability, and scalability for programs? Yes. So the RFP of the past that the foundation rolled out across the 6 neighborhoods will not exist in the same way. There's no way, as we look to scale this work citywide, that we have the internal resources to do that. But we do understand that while a dedicated public funding stream is being designed, an overall system is being developed, that there are programs on the ground that do need to be supported that can benefit from that system once it's put in place. So again, we will make efforts to increase access, availability, and scalability of programs that improve youth success in school, work, and civic life. But the RFP of the past is not something that the foundation will be rolling out. But we'll go deeper in the Q&A section. At this particular time, I'd like to turn it over to Program Officer Kumar Raj to talk about the community leadership work.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. So the main focus of the community leadership strategy during the Good Neighborhoods Initiative was to develop, connect, and focus neighborhood leaders and organizations around a children's agenda that promoted high school graduation and a thriving adulthood. It was the foundation's intention that neighborhoods are better equipped to serve the needs of children and youth when there is a variety of caring adults. So as we began our path in our new opportunity framework, of course using the lessons learned from G&I, it's our goal to bring about fundamental change in poverty, economic mobility, and power dynamics in the city of Detroit. One of the essential levers in an opportunity agenda is community leadership, as it promotes ownership and sustainability. In this strategic approach, we plan to lift up the capacity of neighborhoods and communities by arming young people and the most marginalized residents with the tools to be self-advocates. We will provide them with data through the processes of data collection, use, and interpretation, but also platforms and pathways that look to them for solutions, as they are the experts in their own lives. This work is focused around 4 bodies of work. So it's supporting existing and creating new platforms for current community leaders to build on existing skills and networks. The second one is supporting existing and creating new pipelines for new community leaders. The third one is providing residents with the tools to collect, access, understand, and evaluate data and information in order to turn communities into constituencies. And then the last of the 4 bodies of work is focusing on the development of young people's skills, the opportunities for their active leadership and voice in community, the capacity of adults to work with young people in promoting the deeper understanding of the importance of young people as leaders. So what does success look like for us? We want to increase the community power that leans towards families and children. We want to increase the community participation in the civic process. And lastly, we want young people to have a seat at the table and an equal voice. So essentially all that means is we want to create the space, both formal and informal, for all residents to help shape and determine the destiny of their neighborhoods and communities. We plan to help residents advocate, mobilize, and organize, and better understand the civic process so they can help shape how decisions are made regardless of their zip code. So within the community leadership framework, we're looking at both pipelines and platforms like I mentioned before. Pipelines in this framework allow individuals to practice their leadership skills along with building their networking credibility and community. They also focus on the creation of feedback loops for community concerns to rise up. So what are some examples of this? They include small grants, parent leadership training, fellowship programs, and the launching of digital tools for residents to lift up voices that don't typically get heard. It also allows the foundation to listen, hear, and incorporate the wisdom of the community into our work. Within platforms, it's essential in an opportunity agenda that existing and future leaders have the space to focus on their community change work and are also focused on young people and their development. Skillman leaders and ambassadors will focus on challenges facing young people in Detroit. They'll be connected to a cohort and part of a process that builds on network, agency, and efficacy. So overall, the what of our community leadership framework is mostly the same. However, the how is going to look different with the addition of new components. David?
Thank you, Kumar, and also thank you, Robert. Now we're entering into the part of the webinar where we'll provide a brief overview of what the 2018 investment outlook looks like in our equity frame. I know many of you all probably have questions around what type of investments we will make, what type of grants we will consider. So when it comes to community leadership, to Kumar's point, we will look at investing in individuals who are proven leaders, strengthening existing platforms of leadership such as citywide youth councils and things of that nature. We'll look to create pipelines and platforms for new leaders to test out and build leadership skills and new ideas, and also support mechanisms that lift up youth voice. When it comes to our safety work, we'll look at reducing the number of youth who come in contact with the criminal justice system. So some of our grant making and change making efforts will be to support programs, policies, and practices that actually reduce that number. We will look to support efforts that improve the connectedness between family members and community as well as law enforcement, and also efforts that create a whole ecosystem adoption of restorative practices. We view restorative practices as a very strategic approach in school and out of school to meet the needs of young people, and that's something that we care deeply about. As it pertains to youth development, again, we will make strategic investments to build dedicated public funding. That is something that we understand that we need in Detroit now more than ever. We will also make investments to improve quality, the quality improvement. So the programs that currently exist, how do we support the quality and the fidelity in the delivering of those programs? And then lastly, proof point grant making, in a sense that we want to strengthen the infrastructure of youth serving organizations and support their ability to deliver promising programs that are scalable and create a body of evidence that can actually be scaled citywide, system-wide, to improve outcomes. So again, an RFP of the past from the foundation you will not see, but you will see the foundation inviting organizations to submit applications. You'll see the foundation creating partnerships among several organizations to work together, while we're at the same time building out a dedicated funding platform as well as a youth development system. So how do you apply for funding? In January 2018, the foundation will launch our brand new grant-making guidelines and information on how to apply under this new strategic frame. This opportunity agenda will be available then. In the meantime, we highly encourage you to connect with program staff here at the foundation so we can learn more about the work that you're doing and figure out ways in which it fits into our new strategic frame. None of the work that we hope to do will be able to be accomplished without organizations such as yours, and we look forward to figuring out the strategic ways that we can partner to improve the overall quality of life for young people here in the city of Detroit. This is our program team. You've heard, if you've been on more than one webinar, you've heard many of the voices, but all of the work that we do is undergirded by a phenomenal team of individuals who are not only dedicated to Detroit, but also dedicated to this work. And we wake up each and every day trying to push ourselves and think strategically on how we can improve life outcomes for young people here in the city. So from our vice president of program, to the program directors and the program officer staff, as well as our program assistants, everybody is embedded into the fabric of this framework to make sure that we can properly respond to the needs of the community. Layered on top of the education, the equity, and the economy framework are a series of partner investments that the foundation recognizes as community initiatives. Some of these may be familiar to you. The Cody Rouge Project is a corporate philanthropic partnership in the Cody Rouge neighborhood that is designed to improve youth outcomes, implement a workforce development strategy, and improve the physical space in a neighborhood, really trying to demonstrate the positive impact that can happen when foundations in the corporate sector come together. That particular effort is undergirded and supported by the Cody Rouge Community Action Alliance. The Detroit Children's Fund, a very strategic approach to improve the number of high-quality educational seats with the goal of 25,000 high-quality educational seats by 2025. So it's a partner organization of the foundation to advance our education strategy. My Brother's Keeper Detroit, as many of you all know, was an initiative rolled out under the Obama administration, and something that the foundation, even prior to the Obama administration, that we had cared deeply about and paid close attention to. So improving the life outcomes of boys and young men of color. You'll see a relaunch of the MBK strategy rolling out here soon. And last year, many of you all participated in and witnessed an innovation challenge where we sourced creative ideas that individuals and institutions had to support this particular population. And then lastly, the Coalition for the Future of Detroit School Children, a strategic collaboration consisting of unusual suspects and unlikely allies coming together to improve the educational system in which young people interact in. There'll be a series of recommendations rolling out next month around the coalition's recommendations to approve DPSCD as well as the charter community, and we also are building off the successes that the coalition had in the first version. So those are community initiatives that actually undergird our overall strategy, and now is the time where we would love to entertain your questions.
All right, so right now we have one question that we'll toss out to the panel. What approach is recommended for organizations whose efforts are, one, scalable, but also fit directly in more than one pillar? This question considers not only funding consideration, but positioning for real impact.
No, I think it's a great question because those are, so organizations and programs of that kind are those that will continue to be attractive to us as well. Again, we don't want to do this work in isolation, and our education strategy, our equity strategy, and our economy strategy all complement each other, and you can see a thread of evolution throughout them, making sure from the education standpoint, making sure kids are present and ready to learn and are proficient when it comes to math and reading. From an equity standpoint, making sure that they're high quality out of school time programs and that they have a equitable voice in the city's recovery, and they're avoiding the criminal justice system, to the economy strategy, which is post-high school graduation, college and career pathways, financial empowerment, and making sure that young people can have a youth employment opportunity. So we will be looking for scalable investments in that area, across all of those areas. So if your program or your organization fits in multiple areas, we would love to have a conversation with you between now and the end of the year as we prepare for the new grant guidelines to roll out, because that's something that we're definitely interested in.
All right, we have another question. What data reports are available on your previous initiatives?
On skillman.org, you'll find a section on our website where we have data and evaluation. It's something that the foundation has been committed to for a long time, to collect data and to analyze it on the efficacy and effectiveness of the grant making and strategies that we've had. So if you go to skillman.org under Knowledge Center, you'll find data and evaluation. The reports are available there. In particular, as many of you may know, the Skillman Foundation wrapped up an 11-year, $120 million Good Neighborhoods initiative. There's a whole series of reports under that. If you click on the analytic review, it opens a page with about 20 different reports that go deeply into education, community leadership, safety, youth development, thank you, and as well as an overview of the Detroit context during the 10 or 11 years that the Foundation's Good Neighborhoods Initiative was going on. Going forward, we'll continue to have data on our website, and with a renewed commitment to have shorter time frames on the data that we're presenting, and to communicate that, to test it, to analyze it, and to get it out in a much more rapid fashion.
So we have time for more questions, so please do not hesitate to send them on over. And so right now, while we're waiting for more questions.
So as you all were registering for the webinar, some of the things that you actually listed of what you hope to learn in the webinar. So as you all are thinking of more questions that you actually have, I'll just take a moment to speak to some of those. So some of you all were interested in learning about the plans for the future. Our plans for the future, that actually ties to the opportunity agenda in this particular frame that we're taking. As Detroit continues to recover, the plan we have for the future is to ensure that young people have an opportunity in that recovery. And we want to increase and strengthen their opportunities educationally. We want to make sure that those opportunities are equitable, and also that they have opportunity in whatever the new economy of Detroit looks like. Something else that one of you all were hoping to learn was hearing about Skillman's new strategy and how it will assist you in your work with youth. I think a couple of things are important to lift here. A, the lessons that we've learned in the 6 neighborhoods, to Natalie's point, that are outlined in the analytic review, those are the same lessons that we want to take citywide and adopt, which means that many of those lessons were actually learned through you all as partners, So those are the same partners that we want to help have us inform our work moving forward. Another piece of data that will be interesting for you all to capture is an effort that we fund and support. Is the 2017 Kids Count in Michigan Data Book, was issued by the Michigan League for Public Policy. And it's a data book that outlines 15 indicators of child well-being to see how children are doing around the state, and more specifically here in Detroit. And while there have been improvements in several areas over the past decade or so, Michigan has consistently ranked in the bottom half of states around race, ethnicity, place, and income, and things of that nature. So if Michigan is to progress and become a place where people want to work and raise families, then resources and strategies must be targeted to ensure that children are able to thrive and reach their full potential, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or the place in which they live in. So the foundation is actually supporting that effort to provide holistic data for organizations such as yourselves, and you can use that to inform. Yeah, so some of the other pieces that you all kind of lifted when you registered for the webinar is what will we be looking for in the future for partnerships. And again, just to reiterate what we talked about in this webinar and others, we'll be looking for all types of partners of all sizes to help us scale investments and increase access and opportunity for young people all towards an opportunity agenda. So from a partnership standpoint, we will be looking not only to partner with other nonprofits, we'll also be partnering with the corporate sector, we'll be partnering with the education sector to move the needle for kids. So we are open in our partnership, all aimed towards ensuring an opportunity agenda for kids.
We have another question that popped in. Will request cover multi-year funding?
Yes, that is definitely something that we are considering. We understand the importance of having that type of sustainability in place, and also your ability to plan and think ahead for the future. So it's definitely something that's high on our radar, and look for our grant-making guidelines to roll out at the top of 2018.
We've got another question. Would the foundation be open to suburban city advocacy groups?
Sure. I mean, so the challenges that the city of Detroit proper face, many of them are not unique to many of the challenges that other communities in Wayne County face. So there will be many coalition building efforts where we will be calling on our partners in other communities to help us advance an agenda, and also being able to share some of the resources and successes and learnings that we've experienced here in Detroit that can be applicable to other communities as well.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining the call today. You can stay updated with the foundation in a number of different ways. We send out an email every 4 to 6 weeks. You can register at skillman.org/enews. Also, our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, we share the latest that's happening at the foundation, and more importantly, with our partners. We're building a new website right now, so in early 2018, you'll see that roll out. And as far as the deck from today's webinar, you'll receive an email tomorrow with a link to the video, and next week we will have it up on our website. So again, stay tuned to your email to find a recording of this webinar, and we'll upload it online next week. There's a very short survey waiting for you as you exit. If you would answer those, I think there are about 3 questions there, multiple choice, very speedy. We'd be really appreciative. It will help us improve these webinars for the future, and it'll also help us improve all communications as we go forward, rolling out our strategy in grant making and change making. Thanks again for everyone for joining us today.